step back, then take a look at me. Then maybe I could see where my destiny is taking me. 'Cause I don't think I can make it through another day, Lord. See, the pressure has got too much, got a pain that just won't go away. Yeah, I got a pain that just won't go away.
My early childhood in many ways was a lovely one. I grew up with mum, dad, brother and sister, grandparents living very nearby. We used to spend family holidays together. Yeah, in many ways it was ideal.
I remember as a little child, I was one of the ones in the family who had to kneel down on a concrete step and get coins. It was halfpence at that time it was called, and rub them down, you know, and I'd have a saucer of water to cool my fingers, and I had to rub them down until they would fit the gas meter. I couldn't call it a home really, although later I knew that I'd built an image of how I loved that place and all that, but in reality I was terrified of the place. And that was compounded by the constant rows, arguments, fights. In one particular fight, running next door to ask for help with what was going on. I think I was about 9 then, something like that. This guy next door is a great big guy and all that, well able to look after himself and anyone else really. He opened the door and said, "Hello, Mick." I said, "I need help. Could you come and stop my mum and dad fighting or killing each other?" And he said, "No, I can't interfere with that."
Around the age of 7, I suffered sexual abuse, which I didn't disclose to anyone in my family, and I didn't have full memories of the event until much later in life. But what that event did leave me with was changed feelings inside, and that's what I remember most from my childhood then on, was I felt very, very differently.
When I was about 5 years of age, I can recall being with someone who I felt I should be okay with. Certainly as an adult I realise now that children who would hope that there's members of the family or close friends or all that would be okay people, but but that certainly wasn't the case in my case, where sexual abuse became I began to know about that at that very early age, but knew that it wasn't okay. I could always remember that. Another event when I was about 11, when there was a guy, lots of young boys, friends of mine, we used to get together and so on. There was a guy who seemed very friendly, very nice, an adult, very kind, all these lovely things, gave sweets and all the rest of it, built up all our trust and so on, and would go on to abuse. So those events, if you like, then so I learned secrecy.
I was constantly fearful, afraid, anxious. This carried on into teenage and adult life, how I was in relationships. I seemed to be drawn to people where there was an element of violence and domestic abuse. My self-esteem was so low, I just constantly felt that that was all I deserved. If I was ever in a relationship that was healthy and positive, I would do something to destroy that, because I always felt that I wasn't good enough or wasn't worthy, wasn't deserving.
I used to pretend I was ill in school so that they put me on this couch, never really asking what's wrong, but I wanted to say that everything was wrong. So you got the very vulnerable side, but then still nobody kind of noticing or taking any notice, and so I kept it in myself. The biggest thing I've experienced is fear, and that fear never really goes. You just learn how to handle it. I changed all right, massively, from what may have been a happy little child. There was no chance of that, never any chance of that.
Because I'd never disclosed this to anyone, no one was able to help me, because they didn't know what was going on. I just know inside I just felt worthless and full of self-loathing and self-hatred.
I've got a photograph of me as a kid, and yeah, I can see that inside, you know, looking behind that face, that troubled face. My identity was shaped by what I'd learned and felt and experienced. So if I were to look at that child now and be in the same room as that child, which that child is well within me anyway, there would be that sullenness, there would be fear, there would be violence, there would be wicked thoughts.
There were so many different emotions would go on inside me, and I just found over the years different ways to suppress those. The earliest one, and one that seemed most successful, was to self-harm, and that for a brief moment I could be free of that emotional pain. Likewise, as I got older, drink and prescription drugs would do the same, even illegal drugs to some extent. It was all they were very good tools to block out that pain. Eventually, that emotional feelings inside, they would find a way to resurface.
Well, violence I found, and to be cruel, was kind of a way out, yeah. No need to say no more about that in that respect. It was a way out from that feeling of being powerless, and I hated myself. I couldn't look in the mirror at myself. I hated that, and so the kind of each consequence would mount up on top of another, make me feel even more shit, and then I'd do even worse then because I felt more shit, you know, and there was no way out.
I never managed to have a healthy adult relationship. I would always push people away. As my behaviours, as the emotions became more and more extreme, it actually led to criminal behaviour as a desperate cry for help. Behaviour that was quite harmful to myself, that would see me in and out of A&E at different times in my life, and obviously this not had the impact on me, but that had a huge impact on those closest to me as well, because they never understood where all this behaviour was coming from. So it was very distressing for anyone close to me to have to witness what I was doing to myself.
A really important thing happened where I had to have, because I had so many things wrong with me physically, my body was still shouting out. I had to have an examination where it meant a camera being inserted into my rectum, and almost immediately after that there was almost like a breakdown, a complete breakdown, which brought about from that fear. I wasn't prepared for what happened. I felt ashamed, I felt guilt, I felt so much, you know, in my already confused brain. So I was given drugs then. It felt great not to have any pain, emotional or physical. So now I got a double whammy. I was faced that abuse as a child, and I'm also an addict. I was absolutely, totally dependent upon these drugs, and I was in a mess, a total mess by then. I became withdrawn, claustrophobic, agoraphobic, you name it, panic attacks, fantastic panic attacks. Hallucinations, nightmares, all of it. I knew that I'd reached the bottom of where I was going to go, and the only out was that would have been that I wouldn't have been around. I mean, there was nothing else left really, and so I had a choice, didn't I? I either kind of got through that, or where I went under. It's quite incredible that during all that journey in recovery, that not once was I asked, you know, why is a closed kind of question, but in any way, shape or form, of how I'd gotten to where I was. Yeah, so I thought that because I'd overcome addiction, that I was okay. And then I went to the University of West of England, went through a counselling course as part of my training then, because I really started to think, yeah, I want to do this work. I was asked to work with a guy, and you know, me and that guy might as well have lived in the same home together as children. What he was disclosing was it's almost the same kind of thing, beatings, or loads of things which were going on, and bang, that pressed every single button I had, and I just knew that I was in a mess then, and that began then the long road, if you like, to full recovery, full emancipation. the addiction thing was one thing, but this was something else, and that ultimately that specialist support I had involved working on anger, working on the trauma, working on you know, my body. What that gave me then, that was that clarity and answers to loads and loads of questions, which I answered myself.
The difference that the specialist abuse counselling made is huge. It's enabled me to really understand where all those negative behaviours come from and what's the driving force behind them, and to really come to terms with that and accept that it's never going to go away, it's always going to be a part of my life, but in learning to accept that and move on in a positive way it's life-changing.
I'm not driven, there's no burden now, there's nothing weighing me down, you know, which would encourage me to go look for any of the drugs or any of the things I used to do to alleviate my pain. So I got no need to do that.
It's been nearly 3 years since the one-to-one counselling I had from SOUTHMEAD Project. Recovery is still, I think it's ongoing. I will always get times when, yeah, memories come back and I get wobbly moments. But I've learnt new coping skills and new ways to deal with those feelings in a positive way. And something that was once an incredibly negative part of my life, everything, my whole behaviour, everything was holding me back. I've now been able to turn that around and use it in a very positive way.
I can enjoy that with a real sense of yeah, a feeling, rather than just it going in here or coming out of here. This is coming from here. A massive difference that is. So I guess I'm joined up. Yeah.
My hopes for the future are to go on learning, developing as a person, growing as a person. I've met some great people along the way on my journey to recovery that are also going through their same journeys, and I hope to meet more people like that because they inspire me and together, yeah, give me great hope for the future.